My brother laughed at my special needs son in front of our entire family, calling him damaged goods. But when that lawyer walked into our backyard BBQ with legal papers, my brother's face went white. He had no idea what was coming next, and neither did I. Before we dive into this incredible story of family betrayal and unexpected justice, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Now, let me take you back to that summer day that changed everything. My name is Lisa, and I need to tell you about the day my world turned upside down, then somehow righted itself in the most unexpected way. It was supposed to be just another family barbecue, but it became the day I learned who my real family was, and who had been lying to me for years. Let me start from the beginning. I'm 34 years old, and I've been a single mother for 3 years now. My husband Daniel passed away in a car accident when our son Tommy was just 5. Tommy is 8 now, and he's the light of my life. He has cerebral palsy, which means he uses a wheelchair and sometimes has trouble with his speech, but his mind is sharp as a tack and his heart is bigger than anyone I know. After Daniel died, his family became everything to us. His parents, his sister Rachel, and especially his brother Kevin, they all stepped up to help us through the darkest time of our lives. Or at least, that's what I thought was happening. Kevin was particularly supportive, always checking on us, helping with Tommy's appointments, and making sure we felt included in every family gathering. The annual summer barbecue at Kevin's house had become our favorite tradition. For 6 years running, he'd throw this big party in his gorgeous backyard, complete with a pool, perfectly manicured lawn, and enough food to feed a small army. I always wondered how he afforded such a beautiful house on his salary as a car salesman, but I figured he was just good with money. His wife, Jennifer, had a decent job too, so I never really questioned it. This particular Saturday in July started like any other. I spent the morning getting Tommy ready, making sure his new wheelchair was clean and that we had all his medications packed. Tommy had been so excited about the barbecue all week. He loved spending time with his cousins, and his Uncle Kevin always made him feel special. At least, that's how it used to be. I should have noticed the changes earlier. Over the past few months, Kevin had been different, more distant. Sometimes when Tommy would try to hug him or show him something, Kevin would seem uncomfortable, almost annoyed. But I chalked it up to stress. Everyone deals with life differently, right? We arrived at Kevin's house around noon, and the party was already in full swing. The smell of grilling burgers filled the air, kids were splashing in the pool, and family members were scattered around the yard catching up. Tommy's face lit up when he saw everyone, and he immediately started navigating his wheelchair toward his cousins who were playing near the pool. That's when I heard it. Kevin talking to his neighbor over by the grill, not realizing I was close enough to hear. "Yeah, it's always a bit of a production when Lisa and the kids show up," he said, flipping a burger with more force than necessary. "The wheelchair takes up half the patio, and we all have to pretend everything's normal." My stomach dropped. I stood there frozen, hoping I'd misheard, hoping there was some other explanation. But then his neighbor responded, "Must be tough on you guys having to deal with all that." Kevin just shrugged. "What can you do?" Family's family, I guess. I felt like I'd been slapped. This was the same man who had hugged Tommy at Daniel's funeral and promised he'd always be there for us. The same man who had helped me pick out Tommy's first wheelchair and assured me that our family would love and support him no matter what. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe Kevin was just having a bad day. I focused on Tommy, who was having a great time despite the fact that his cousins were swimming and he couldn't join them in the pool. He was content to sit by the edge and cheer them on, his face beaming with joy. But Kevin's attitude continued throughout the afternoon. When Tommy asked for help reaching something from the food table, Kevin sighed loudly and muttered about how everything has to be such a big deal. When Tommy accidentally bumped into a chair with his wheelchair while trying to get closer to the conversation, Kevin made a big show of moving furniture around and complaining about the obstacle course. I was getting angrier by the minute, but I kept quiet. This was supposed to be a family gathering, and I didn't want to cause a scene. Tommy hadn't noticed his uncle's behavior yet, and I wanted to keep it that way. My little boy adored Kevin, and I couldn't bear the thought of that innocence being shattered. But then it happened, the moment that changed everything. Tommy had been trying so hard to be helpful all day. Despite his physical limitations, he always wants to contribute, to feel useful. When he saw that the drinks were running low, he decided to help refill the cooler. He wheeled himself over to the kitchen, carefully balanced a pitcher of lemonade on his lap, and started making his way back to the patio. You have to understand, Tommy's coordination isn't perfect because of his condition, but he's gotten so much better over the years. He's careful and determined, and usually, he manages just fine. But as he was navigating through the sliding door, the pitcher slipped. The lemonade went everywhere, all over the patio, splashing onto a few people's shoes, making a sticky mess that would definitely need cleaning up. It was an accident, the kind of thing that could happen to anyone, disabled or not. Tommy's face crumpled immediately. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," he kept repeating, tears starting to form in his eyes. "I was just trying to help." I rushed over to comfort him and start cleaning up the mess, but before I could even reach them, Kevin exploded. "For crying out loud, Tommy. Can't you be more careful? Look at this mess." His voice was loud enough that the entire party stopped to stare. "You're always causing problems, always making everything harder for everyone else." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Kevin, it was an accident. He was trying to help, but Kevin wasn't done. His face was red with anger, and all the politeness, all the fake concern he'd been showing for years, just melted away. "An accident? Lisa, everything with him is an accident. He can't do anything right. He's clumsy, he's always in the way, and honestly, he's just a burden on this whole family." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone, and I mean everyone, was staring at Kevin in shock. His own parents looked horrified. His wife's mouth was hanging open. The neighbors who had been chatting nearby suddenly found their shoes very interesting to look at. But Kevin wasn't finished. He was on a roll now, saying things I never imagined could come out of his mouth. "You know what, Lisa? I'm tired of pretending. We're all tired of pretending. That kid is damaged goods, and instead of facing reality, you keep dragging him around to family events like everything's fine. Maybe it's time you considered putting him somewhere where people are trained to deal with his issues." I felt like the ground had opened up beneath me. My Tommy, my beautiful, loving, brilliant little boy, was sitting there listening to his uncle, a man he loved and trusted, call him damaged goods, call him a burden, suggest that I should put him in an institution. Tommy's tears were flowing freely now, and his small voice broke as he whispered, "Mama, what did I do wrong?" That snapped me out of my shock. I moved to Tommy's side and wrapped my arms around him. "You didn't do anything wrong, baby." "Nothing at all." Then I stood up and faced Kevin. My voice was shaking with rage and hurt, but I kept it controlled for Tommy's sake. "How dare you? How dare you speak about my son like that? Tommy has cerebral palsy. He didn't choose this, and it doesn't make him less valuable or less worthy of love and respect." Kevin crossed his arms and looked at me with something that looked almost like disgust. "Stop making excuses for the broken kid, Lisa. We all know what he is." That was it. I couldn't stay there another second. I started gathering our things, my hands shaking with anger and hurt. Tommy was still crying, and I could hear some family members trying to quietly tell Kevin that he'd gone too far, but the damage was done. As I was loading Tommy's wheelchair into our car, trying to hold back my own tears so I could be strong for him, I heard a car door slam behind me. I turned around and saw a sleek black sedan parked on the street. A woman in a sharp business suit was walking up the driveway, carrying a leather briefcase and looking very official. She approached the group that was still standing around the patio, looking uncomfortable and whispering among themselves. "Excuse me," she said in a clear, professional voice. "I'm looking for Kevin Thompson. I'm attorney Jennifer Walsh, and I have some legal documents that require his immediate attention." Kevin, who had been standing near the grill with his arms still crossed, suddenly went pale. And I mean pale. All the color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. What is this about?" he stammered. The lawyer looked around at the gathered family members, then back at Kevin. This concerns the estate of Daniel Thompson and matters related to his surviving beneficiaries. I believe Mrs. Lisa Thompson is here as well. My heart started pounding. Daniel's estate? What estate? When Daniel died, we'd gone through all his paperwork. There had been his life insurance through work, which had helped with the funeral costs and kept us afloat for a few months. But that was it. What was this lawyer talking about? I'm Lisa Thompson, I said, walking back toward the group, but I don't understand. My husband didn't have an estate. We checked everything when he passed. Attorney Walsh looked from me to Kevin and back again, and I could see something like concern cross her face. Mrs. Thompson, could we speak privately for a moment? This is quite important. Kevin stepped forward, his voice cracking slightly. Now wait just a minute. I don't know what this is about, but this is my house and my family gathering. If there's something to discuss, we can discuss it here. The lawyer gave Kevin a long, steady look that made him shift uncomfortably. Mr. Thompson, I strongly suggest you allow me to speak with Mrs. Thompson privately first. Trust me when I say this conversation is going to happen one way or another. Something about her tone made everyone uncomfortable. You could feel the tension in the air. Family members were glancing at each other with worried expressions, and Kevin's wife was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before. I followed Attorney Walsh to a quiet corner of the yard, my mind racing with possibilities. What could this be about? And why did Kevin look like he was about to be sick? Mrs. Thompson, she began, keeping her voice low, I'm going to be very direct with you because I believe you've been the victim of a serious betrayal. Your husband had a substantial life insurance policy through his company, much larger than the one you're aware of. The payout was $250,000. I felt dizzy. That's impossible. I would have known about that. I handled all the paperwork when he died. The policy named you as the primary beneficiary, with your son Tommy as the secondary beneficiary. However, your husband also named his brother Kevin as the trustee, responsible for managing the funds until Tommy reached adulthood, given your son's special needs. My mouth went dry. What are you saying? Mrs. Thompson, Kevin received that money 3 years ago. All of it. And according to my investigation, he never told you it existed. I stared at her, not comprehending what I was hearing. That's not possible. Kevin has been helping us. He's been supportive. He wouldn't— Mrs. Thompson, that money was meant to ensure your son's care and your family's financial security. Instead, Kevin has been using it for his own purposes. That house, his cars, his lifestyle, it's all been funded by money that rightfully belonged to you and Tommy. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Everything started making sense in the most horrible way possible. Kevin's beautiful house that he couldn't possibly afford on his salary. His sudden distance over the past few months. His growing resentment toward Tommy. His cruel words today. He hadn't been helping us out of love or family obligation. He'd been managing his guilt while spending money that belonged to us. Money that should have paid for Tommy's therapy, his medical equipment, his future care. Money that could have saved us from the financial stress that had been crushing us for 3 years. And all this time, while I struggled to pay for Tommy's medications, while I worked extra shifts to afford his wheelchair, while I lay awake at night worrying about how I'd pay for his future needs, Kevin had been living in luxury off money that was meant for my disabled son. The lawyer continued, I was hired by your husband's former employer when they discovered irregularities in how the insurance payout was handled. There's going to be a full investigation, and Kevin will be facing serious legal consequences. I walked back to the group with Attorney Walsh, my legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. Every eye was on us, but all I could see was Kevin, who looked like a cornered animal. Kevin, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, is it true? Did you steal the insurance money that was meant for Tommy? He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Lisa, I can explain. It's not what it sounds like. I was managing it for you. I was going to— $250,000, I said, the number feeling surreal in my mouth. You've had $250,000 that belonged to my son, and you let us struggle. You let me work myself to death trying to pay for his care, and all this time you were living off money that should have been helping him. Kevin's parents gasped. His wife stepped away from him like he was contagious. His sister Rachel put her hand over her mouth in shock. "You son of a bitch," Daniel's father said, his voice shaking with rage. "That money was for Tommy. For his future. How could you do this to your own nephew?" But what broke my heart most was Tommy's small voice from where he sat in his wheelchair. "Uncle Kevin, did you take my daddy's money?" Kevin looked at Tommy, and for just a moment, I thought I saw shame in his eyes. But then he straightened up and tried to justify the unjustifiable. "Tommy, you don't understand. Your mom wouldn't have used that money right. She would have wasted it. I was keeping it safe." "Safe in your bank account?" Attorney Walsh interjected. "Safe in your house that you purchased with stolen funds? Mr. Thompson, you're going to be served with papers for theft, breach of fiduciary duty, and fraud. The FBI will also be investigating this as potential mail fraud since the insurance documents were sent through federal mail." The next few minutes were chaos. Kevin's wife was screaming at him, demanding to know what else he'd lied about. His parents were asking how they could have raised someone capable of such betrayal. Rachel was crying and apologizing to me over and over. But through it all, I just held Tommy's hand and watched Kevin's world fall apart, the same way mine had fallen apart 3 years ago when Daniel died, and again today when I realized someone I trusted had been stealing from my disabled son. The legal process moved quickly after that. Kevin tried to claim he'd been borrowing the money and planned to pay it back, but the evidence was overwhelming. He'd used the insurance payout as a down payment on his house just months after Daniel's death. He'd bought new cars, taken expensive vacations, renovated his kitchen, all while watching us struggle. The case settled within 6 months. Kevin was forced to sell his house and liquidate his assets to repay the money, plus interest and legal fees. He ended up owing more than $300,000 by the time everything was calculated. His wife divorced him, his parents disowned him, and he lost his job when the scandal became public. With the returned money, everything changed for Tommy and me. We were able to get him the best physical therapy available. We bought a house with wheelchair accessibility features. We set up a trust for his future care. Most importantly, we could stop worrying about money and focus on what really mattered: Tommy's happiness and development. Tommy is thriving now. He's excelling in school, he's made friends, and he's learned to trust again after what Kevin did to him. We found a new family in Daniel's cousins who live across the state, people who love Tommy for exactly who he is. As for Kevin, I heard he's working at a gas station in another state, living in a studio apartment, and probably will be paying off debts for the rest of his life. His own family wants nothing to do with him. Sometimes people ask me if I feel bad about what happened to him, if I think the punishment was too harsh. But then I remember that day at the barbecue. I remember him calling my son damaged goods, while living in a house bought with money stolen from that same child. I remember Tommy's tears and his confused question about what he'd done wrong. Kevin didn't just steal money from us, he stole 3 years of better medical care for Tommy. He stole our financial security. He stole our trust. And he did it all while pretending to be our loving family member, all while judging and resenting us for needing help that he was supposed to be providing. The cruelest irony is that if Kevin had been honest from the beginning, if he had properly managed that money as he was supposed to, Tommy and I would have been forever grateful. Kevin would have been the hero of our story, the loving uncle who made sure his nephew had everything he needed. Instead, his greed and his resentment turned him into the villain, and in the end, trying to keep money that was never his cost him everything that actually mattered. Can you believe someone would steal from their disabled nephew while mocking him? Kevin got exactly what he deserved. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear about standing up for family. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories. Until next time, remember, the truth always finds a way to surface, and karma has perfect timing.